Hello, my name is Jan Kubań. I was already introduced. I will say a little bit. So here's the logo of PAFER, a foundation I am president of, and here is logo of the Physics of Life. Physics of Life, it's a scientific discipline I founded, and I would like that it develops and it will influence the social life of the whole globe. So whenever you will see logo of the Physics of Life, it means that what I am talking about belongs to the physics of life. Let's start. It's a James Madison, American statesman, diplomat, expansionist, philosopher, and founding father. Everybody knows who was James Madison. And in 1794, he warned against the old trick of those in power. They turn every contingency into a resource for accumulating force in government. Contingency is a possible event, a chance, an opportunity. So those in power, they want to get more and more power. They run two class struggles. The class struggle theory was developed in 1820, 1830s by the Scottish philosopher, historian, politician, and economist James Mill. And probably he was influenced by two French intellectuals, Charles Comte and Charles Duhanier. So the fundamental message of this class struggle proposed by James Mill was that it's fundamentally different from the Marxist class struggle. It is the struggle of the ruling class held by the state apparatus against the ruled class, a group burdened with taxes, regulations, and ruled by the ruling class. Okay, so he proposed that there is basic form of class struggle between governing and the governed. And I, starting my work in PAFER, I thought a little bit how I will entitle all the series of books devoted to social issues. And I proposed library for the governing and the governed. So I felt, because I didn't know the philosophy of James Mill, but I felt that the principal discrepancy is between those who are in power and those governed. So this is one of the first books of this series. Do you know why you don't know who the president of Switzerland is? This book is introducing to the direct democracy, the political system which operates in Switzerland. It's very efficient because Switzerland is ranking in the top ranking of wealth of the people and happiness of the people. So it seems that this system is quite interesting and quite good for the people. So remember, I would repeat, and I will repeat the core message of my presentation. There is only one basic class struggle. All other struggles are just derivatives of this principal one. So I would like to present two guys from Poland. This guy, his name is Morawiecki, Kornel Morawiecki. He was an oppositionist. He fought against those in power during the communist regime. So he was fighting for liberty, justice, equality, free market economy, the truth, sound money, etc. And he was the founder of Fighting Solidarity. Probably you know the organization Solidarity. Poland at this period of time was in the condition as Venezuela is right now, and we created Solidarity. But this guy created Fighting Solidarity. So he said, we cease to talk to those in power, we have to fight against them. Here is the guy, Mateusz Morawiecki. He is a prime minister, and what he is doing, he's increasing power. He's suppressing liberty, justice, equality, free market economy, the truth, and sound money. He's doing this now. Who can tell me, apart of Poles, what connection is between two guys? The first one is Kornel Morawiecki. The second one is Mateusz Morawiecki. So they have the same name. So this guy is the son of this guy. So he is doing just opposite what he has done. Why? Because he is in power. Okay, so it's a famous statement of Lord Acton that power corrupts and power corrupts absolutely. So this guy is corrupted. It's not a coincidence, it's irony of history that the son is just doing exactly opposite what his father fought for. Some examples. So people in power abuse this power. And we have this vicious circle of power. We have some examples. American War of Independence, Poland in 1990s, New Zealand in 1980s. They were in the same condition, economical condition, as Poland was in this period of time, and Venezuela now. So, what is the main characteristic of basic nature of the cycle of governance? In fact, history is a sequence of the abuse of power that leads to the suppression of liberty, justice, equality, free market economy, the truth, and sound money. Those in power are simply building a pump, sucking resources from citizens and transferring them to their pockets. As you can see, it's a logo of the physics of life. Sucking pump. I am an engineer. I am not a scientist, political scientist. So for me, the cognitive model is that they really build the sucking pump, which pumps resources from citizens to their pockets. Finally, this process ends in extreme inequalities and hunger, and then to social outrage. So do not forget, the class struggle is a struggle between the ruling class and those holding the state apparatus against the ruled class, those burdened with taxes, regulations, and governed by the rulers. So, social outrage. Here is an example from French Revolution. It's not a nice thing. The people are killed on the street. So, the physics of life resurges theory. Resurgy, it's a generalized concept of all kinds of resources we require, we fight for. So, Georges Danton said during the French Revolution that revolution is a mere transfer of property. That's it. So, the owners of resurgy changes. So, the poor people are killing the rich ones. I transform this quote that revolution changes the pump owners. That's it. As Morawiecki, you remember. So the father fought for the pump owners, and now his son is a pump owner. Who belongs to the state? Everybody who is paid by the state. So state officials, state teachers, state journalists, state scientists, state employers, state artists, state clergymen, state bureaucrats, soldiers, and policemen. So, as a matter of fact, in the communist regime, when we held socialism in Poland, everybody was a member of the state, because everybody was paid by the state. And now, basic nature of governance. People in power absorb more and more resources and spend them less and less efficiently, because they have the power and they are able to abuse it. What kind of techniques they are using? They lie to get more power. They steal to get more resources. How can you name inflation? It's a pure stealing. Just they steal money. They change the law to take away their responsibility and make their subordinates over-responsible. I don't know how it happens in young countries, but the state officials are not responsible. But the citizens are extremely responsible. If we don't pay 1 cent of tax, we can be punished. And when a state official is making fraud of 1 million zloty, he can, avoid kind of punishment. What kind of tools are they using? Propaganda, media, inflation, education, administration, complicated and unjust law, direct coercion, double standard law, dependent supporters. And so I repeat once again, if we allow politicians to break the law in the name of a perceived crisis, they will create more crises so they can break the law. They turn every opportunity to accumulate force in government. These are the words of James Madison. Here is the painting of Peter Bruegel the Younger. It's a 16th century. You can see people who get money from this bag entering to the ass of the man who is paying them. For me, it's a perfect allegory of inflation and people in power, okay? So this kind of picture you can show to the youngsters in the primary school and you can explain what does it mean. And you can say that it is, for the time being, it is an everlasting process, okay? So it was 16th century and we live now in 21st century. Why don't we listen to people like Madison, like Gustave Le Bon, like Ludwig von Mises, and this one, I forgot his name, our beloved Ken Skolland. Why do we listen to people like this? Look how many people he can gather. So here there is 80 of us. And Mussolini gathered thousands of them. Look with what kind of passion these people accepted Hitler. I saw also the movies from Venezuela, when Maduro was speaking and all the gatherings said, yes, he's right, okay, yes, we will support you. And they have nothing to eat, okay? But they support him, okay? They don't think. Okay, so now I ask the question why we are not listening to the wise people, but we are listening to the bad people. So there are two kind of factors, internal and external. So we are ancestors of monkeys. So you have to know that our genes make this. So we are extremely high vulnerable to the virus of socialism. Socialism is some kind of fetish, okay? We believe in it. Everybody believes. People are formatted by the views of educators. People are usually lazy creatures. All analysis, considerations, and searching for the truth costs a lot of effort, and we try to avoid the effort. People, especially those entangled in the hardship of everyday existence, do not want to reflect deeply. They adopt simple and apparently obvious solutions, matching their own pre-programmed ideas. Two or more points of view introduce cognitive dissonance, which causes stress. If one has to adopt a new attitude, it is tiring, and sometimes even impossible, if it requires a reevaluation of current views. People have a tendency to link their views to their position, economical, political, social, and familiar. In other words, they conform and do not perceive from more general perspective. People gain features such as gullibility, vulnerability to the influence of others, lack of own opinion, and unconscious ignorance. People are not looking for the truth. They adopt someone else's opinion and repeat it as their own. Next slide is devoted to external causative factors, because these factors also make us to behave, so listen to the bad people and not listen to the good people. Actions of the state and state-related pretenders to the power. I have never heard extensive discussions what should be the best socio-political system. Always politicians are saying, if I will rule, it will be better. I will improve the situation. They are not discussing, neither politicians, nor the journalists, nor the teachers, nor academic researchers are not discussing, okay, let's make the big research, what kind of political system would be the best for the given country. So there are lazy journalists, dependent teachers, and matrix. And matrix was already proposed by François de la Rochefoucauld in 17th century, and I transform his quotes. We are so used to affirm before understanding that we end up believing in ourselves. I think that this quote applies very good to the present situation of COVID. So we took some labels, and we use these labels to explain. So the journalists, the researchers, they didn't enter deeply in all the process. Okay? Here is one of the internal and external experiments which proves what I said, or what I just said. Ron John experiment held in 1967 consisted of transforming the group of 200 youngsters into the fighting fascists. It took him how many days? 5. Within 5 days, he transformed the group of 200 youngsters into the fascists. And here is famous quote of Ron John's: "I was amazed at how easy students gave up their freedom for the thought of being superior to their neighbors." It is a constatation of Ron John's. My constatation is, I am amazed at how easy people gave up their freedom for the thought of getting someone else's money. Let's sum it up. Dream of superiority and someone else's money are perfect bites used by politicians. So bite, it's something you put on the hook to fish. And who are we? We are the handful of those who knows, and we are against enormity of wrongdoers. So in psychology, there is a concept of Cassandra complex. It is the name given to a phenomenon where people who predict bad news or warnings are ignored or outright dismissed. So even if we say something which is very important to the society, which is deeply rethought, you will be just rejected, because people don't want to listen such messages. They prefer to listen, you are beautiful, you are intelligent, you deserve to receive money, and I will give you to you, but just vote for me. Okay? Very simple mechanism. So now I would like to excommunicate some group of people. Who I would like to excommunicate? Teachers who do not open the eyes of the young to the most important problems of this world. Journalists who do not search for the truth and do not explain the mechanisms of this world. Politicians who, knowing the weaknesses of voters, only fool them in order to keep and extend their power. So now I will excommunicate them, and after finishing, I will raise my left hand, and you will say, okay, so be it. So it's a typical procedure of excommunication. I would exclude them from the society. I would cast them into the outer darkness. I would condemn them to the everlasting fire. I would submit them to the eternal damnation. Thank you very much. But please do not laugh at medieval superstitions. The only way is to change them. We have to change them. And the only way we know it's talking, presenting the facts, and we have to develop new kind of influence of those people, journalists, scientists, teachers, and so on and so on. It is not so simple, you can see. We can break our teeth. How to do this? How change the people? That is the question. You know, it's a better question than this famous Shakespearean question, be or not to be. Okay? How to change them? So, I propose to join Liberty International, join and support PAFERE, and promote direct democracy. Because direct democracy and representative democracy are completely different political systems. So what I would like to ask you, that you learn a little bit about direct democracy. Here is the graph, the difference between these two democracies. Who wants? I will send this presentation, and there is all these pictures are on my website. You can get it. What the differences are? So here is an order of individual. Here is an order of chosen ones. Here is a decentralization. Here power of delegation. And you can see in the bottom, you know, two fighting groups, the reds against the blues. It's a typical situation in Poland nowadays, in the United States. So representative democracy have a tendency to split, to divide the society. However, in direct democracy, you can see that the blues and the reds are mixed. They have open dialogue and free debate, what we don't have in Poland, okay? So it's a summary, it's the last slide now. I would like to emphasize that class struggle exists. Basic class struggle is between governing and governed. Quite all human history derives from this struggle. People are very easy to manipulate. Remember, 5 days to transform 200 youngsters into fascists. Direct democracy is not equal it's not the same as representative democracy. So now, what we have to do? Let's do everything to educate people how not to be such an easy target for politicians. Let's educate them about the internal and external factors of human susceptibility to social madnesses and how to get rid of our monkey legacy. These issues, so the issues we are talking about in this conference and the conferences before, should be taught from the very beginning, Chris. I would like to emphasize, from the very beginning. But we should find out and develop methods how to do it, how to influence youngsters. I could say about my personal experience when I was 10 years old in the Soviet class, because I was educated in the Soviet Union. Our teacher explained us what is communism and how it will be great to live in communism. And finally, after 30 minutes talked of her, one of us, 10 years old guy, stood and he said, and dear teacher, if I understood you well, you mean that in communism I will work as much as I want and I will get as much as I want to. She said, yes. And he said, it will never work because I don't work at all and I want to get a lot of stuff. Okay, so it's a simple logic, and this logic is also available for the kids. But we have to find out the methods. So I hope I inspired you, because we have to, as I said, develop methods to influence youngsters, because our future generations, okay, not only gather here in Medellin, in Ulaanbaatar or Tallinn or somewhere else, but really start to educate kids. Thank you very much.
We'll open a few questions from the audience.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. When you were in the slide about the nature of governance, do you think that nature or that structure applies to all type of governance, like for example corporate governance? Like, do you think it will end up the same?
So, you know, when you study all type of governance, you see that the basic difference is between what we have in Switzerland and the rest of the countries, it's quite the same. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, my name is Maria. I am from Venezuela, and well, thanks for your presentation. It was awesome. And well, in Venezuela we have an authoritarian regime, and it's very smart in the way that they are learning about how the first world countries are implementing policies. I mean, Nicolás Maduro is now implementing liberal reforms as charter cities, special economic zones, and things like that, but it's only as okay. So how can we explain to people that that's only as okay and we are not facing a real liberalization in our country? Because it's very hard to explain to people that what is a special economic zone and if the government is like monopolizing all the things there and politicizing like all there is Chavismo and there is no real liberalization. How can we explain that to people that never had the opportunity to know freedom at first hand?
Okay, so I can say my own experience from Poland, because I was the teenager, so 17 years old, something like this, when the transformation. So this process started at the 1980s, and there were a lot of people talking about this, and there were a lot of people publishing different kind of books. It was they risked their not lives, but they risked to be in prison. But there were a lot of activity, just enlightening people. Okay, and as a matter of fact, I don't know the situation in Venezuela, but Poles were very well educated, because our socialism claimed that people should be very well educated. So people were educated, and they have the basic logic. Okay, so when they started to read, for example, George Orwell, 1984, they started to rethink what is happening in our reality. There were some journalists, for example, the sport commentator, one was a physician. They say, I would say they leaked some messages by sport, by physics, and they were a lot of comedians, So this is very important factor, that they were a lot of comedians, people who just make fun, and they explained also the phenomena of weakness of our government, or stupidity of our government, by making jokes, by making some cabaret, and so on and so on. So it was spontaneous grassroots movement, okay, to enlighten people, to tell them. But the major factor, I think, was that we had nothing to eat. Maybe it was better situation than you have now in Venezuela, because I have heard that some people are eating the shit of pigs and the shit of that you ate animals from the zoo in Caracas, I think. Yes, so I don't know, is it true? But I think that the work of enlightening people, I know that Bastiat society in Venezuela, they have access to main media. They have to speak. They spoke once with me, so I gave the interview. But they can speak. We are living with some people who remember our situation in Poland. We can speak. We can say you what had happened. So I think also international influence. So we have the Pope. So it was a very important factor. Our own Pope who understood socialism. Now we have the Pope Francisco. He's illiterate. He's completely illiterate as far as social problems are concerned. He uses narrative for socialism to his own benefit. However, John Paul II message was very clear. What you are doing here, you, the people in the power, it's not a good thing. You have to change. And people, so the Poles, when he talked, there is a famous quote of John Paul II, if I, could you help me? So he said, I came here and I would like God to change the face of the earth, of this earth. And every Pole understood that he is talking about Poland and about governance. So, you know, it was applause, and till now we remember this quote. So, you know, and also influence of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. So we say they were three of them, even there are the books. Okay, so you have to find allies, you have to find the way to enlighten people in short messages, in books, you know, and if you want, I translated the book from Russian about socialism. You can translate it from English because it's already translated into English to Spanish, and you can spread it. It's a very good, very easy language, understandable. The guy is writing, you know, precisely. He's an engineer. He was an engineer because he passed away.
Many of the great dictatorships in this century, or in our experience, lifetime, began with democracy. I think of Nazism in Venezuela. And sometimes we say, what is the definition of democracy? 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. So I guess my question is, democracy isn't enough. How do we protect the minorities?
How we protect what?
Minorities.
You know, in representative democracy, we cut the feedback. Okay, so the bad things are not influencing the system, and they do not change them for better. Okay, so this feedback is not cut in direct democracy. So it's my opinion. Okay, I feel that the direct democracy is far better than representative one. Okay, so I think that we have to fight. We have to promote direct democracy, and so the 2 pillars of direct democracy are federalism and subsidiarity. Okay, so if I ask here, who knows what subsidiarity is? Okay, few hands. You know, we are libertarians, so we have to know this term. But about 30% of people know this. And when you ask youngsters in Poland, nobody knows. And more, this term is spoiled by the authorities, like this, because they say subsidiarity, it's helping, it's a socialist helping. But subsidiarity comes from another word, it's a help only as a last resort, okay? We help the fighting units which are losing, and if they lose, we will lose all the battles. So it's our last resort, we should help them, okay? So we have to promote direct democracy because direct democracy provides feedback, and this is a system which changes, which can change itself, and in which ordinary people have influence of the process of governance. Jacek, teraz, bo ja nic nie zrozumiem.
It seems that democracy just ends up being governed by whoever runs the media, which is certainly a major problem because, as we're finding, at least in America, most of the professional intellectuals are really just psychopaths. Not all of them, but certainly a great deal of them are. And unfortunately, that also especially applies to college professors. Is there something that we can do to fix this problem? And why did intellectuals sell out humanity in the first place? They really, they love Karl Marx, even in spite of all the misery that he's caused. They still worship Marx.
They are paid by state. They are paid by state. This is the main issue. And what to do as far as media are concerned. In Poland, so-called internet televisions are developing, as very, very fast. So I work for the television in Reality 24, and I am talking not about simple things. But I have about sometimes 20,000 views and sometimes even 40,000 views. Okay, so it means that this television has an influence. This is that, and we also trying to enter the mainstream media, but the mainstream media don't want to let us to enter, because we will talk about reality and the true mechanism of the society. So they do everything to stop us. But however, we are fighting, and these internet televisions are developing. So it's I would say, I don't know if it is the case in the United States or in France, but in Poland it's extremely popular.
So, first of all, I appreciate your talk, and I think we're trying to get to the same place here. I think we're on the same team. But I'm concerned about your emphasis on direct democracy, not just for the point he made, which is a very important point, by the way, which is the reason we have a constitution in the United States, to take many things off the table. So the majority of people, regardless of what they think, they can, for example, free speech. The majority of people said, hey, we don't want people saying bad things about the president or something. In theory, and I think in practice and in reality, the Supreme Court would strike this down. It wouldn't even make it to the Supreme Court. Lower court would strike this down. In the early days of the United States, very few things were up for a vote. Very few things. Politicians were part-time. And most people didn't care what happened with the vote, because whatever was voted on wasn't really affecting their lives. What's happened since then is more and more things are up for a vote. Almost anything now, with the exception of a few things that are specifically protected in the Bill of Rights, virtually anything can be affected by the vote. So, would it be more accurate to say that reducing what can be affected by the vote is much more important than how we figure out what the answer is, if the jurisdiction of the people in terms of what they vote for is virtually everything? In other words, I prefer an iron-fisted dictator making the decisions if all they affected were very, very few things over here that nobody really cared about, than a direct democracy or a representative democracy where everything is on the table for a vote. So I'm suggesting maybe the focus ought to be reducing the jurisdiction of what can be affected by the vote, rather than the mechanism by which we get the answer to affect things. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I thought a lot about this, so when I talk with the people, they agree that the best political solution is to have a wise king. Okay, but I don't know any of such a king. Because when you get the power, you are corrupted by the power. Okay? So I think from the engineering point of view, I am an engineer. I founded my company. So I introduced some systemic solutions to my company to run it. It should self-run, to be self-running company. So I think that the most important it is this feedback. James Madison said, the people are not angels, but those in power are not angels neither. So there should be some state of balances, okay? And he proposed gun ownership. You should also remember that your democracy, American democracy, is completely different from our Polish democracy. We are 3 times worse democracy than you have in the United States. Okay, so I think that we should start a discussion about the best political system. We should work on this. Okay, yeah. So it's my opinion.
Okay. Any final thoughts? Real quick.
No. Thank you very much for your attention and questions.